I was born in a farmer's family in rural Spain. Yes, these hands had become garlic in the hot summer, grapes in the fall, and olives in the cold winter. My grandparents were born during the Civil War in Spain, and then my parents were grown up during a dictatorship in Spain. From my four grandparents, only one of my grandmother could properly read and write and do basic arithmetic operations. My two grandfathers could barely read and write, and my other grandmother was fully illiterate. My parents were grown up in the 70s in Spain, as I said, in a rural area where it was not understood that people need to get higher educations. So when they were 14, they were taken out of school and they were sent to work in the farm. Only from my full family, one of my uncles and one of my aunts made it to higher education. Only my aunt made it to university. So it didn't come to a surprise that when I told my parents that I wanted to be an astronomer, they were sure I was completely out of my mind. And I mean, I don't blame them, because who that they knew of was making any money working as an astronomer watching the stars? Well, nobody. This was the mid-90s, and you might think, oh, you can Google, right? What is an astronomer? But in the mid-90s in Spain, there was no Google, and there was no internet. So yeah, here I have a huge problem of lack of role models. As I grew up, I went to high school. I had a very good GPA. I was one of the best students in my high school. And I was still sure that I wanted to be an astronomer. My parents were not very supportive of it, because they thought that I could not make any money, I could not make a living out of it. And they told me, why don't you become an engineer instead? Or a doctor? Like, do something useful with a high GPA. But I didn't want to. I wanted to be an astronomer. So I went to Madrid to study physics, an undergrad in physics and master in astrophysics, which is where you need to become an astronomer in Spain. And a few years after, I managed to graduate. But of course, that was not that easy, right? Madrid is one of the most expensive cities in Spain. And in order to be able to live there, I had to have a grant from the Spanish government, because my parents could not support me. That grant would pay for my tuition, would pay for my rent, and that was barely it. So I was living to a meal-to-meal basis. And things like going to the cinema, going to a restaurant, going to a bar or to a party, or going shopping, those were luxuries I could for sure not afford. And the other thing I could not afford was failing any of my courses. And you might be wondering, I don't know if there are any physics students here, but you might be wondering how easy it is to fail a course in physics. Well, it's actually rather easy. Only 10% of the students would pass all courses on a given year. And I had to be one of that 10%. But as I said, here's the proof that I graduated. And then it was like, I was so ready to become an astronomer. And for that, you need to go to grad school. So I applied to all the grad schools I could. And I was so lucky to get into one of the best grad schools to study astronomy in the world. That was in a very well-known university in Germany. I was so proud of myself. I thought, well, not bad to be a countryside lady. But then grad school is tough. I'm not gonna lie. Astronomy is tough. You need to know many things. Of course, astronomy, physics, math, programming. You need to speak a language that is not your own language, right? Clearly, English is not my first language. You need to know astronomical instrumentation, so many things. And it's tough for everybody, right? But I found that it's even tougher if you don't belong to the demographics, that is the most common one in the field. Only 28% of astronomers are women. And I tell you, that doesn't help you to feel welcome. You need to do more, and you need to do better in order to be respected, just the same as your male counterparts. And you figure out very early on that doing things like speaking up in an all-men meeting or going to a conference can be high-risk sports. I got in there because that was my dream, that's what I wanted to do, and after 3 years and a half, I graduated from my PhD as well. I must say, my self-esteem was not doing the best, but I was feeling very happy because I was the first person in my family to get a PhD. But guys, the trip was just starting. Becoming a PhD is the first thing you need to know to become an astronomer. And to continue to the path, the next thing you need to do is to get a postdoctoral position. So I applied to all the postdoctoral positions that were out there, any that I could qualify for. And I got only one. That was a postdoctoral position to go back to Spain for only 1 year, and in a subject that was not the subject I did during my PhD. It was in astronomical instrumentation. So I was happy because I got to continue my journey, but I was disappointed too because it was such a short postdoc and it was not in my topic, so it felt a little bit like a failure to me. But I thought, well, I'm gonna learn something, at least I get to continue doing my science, it's gonna be okay. So I moved back to Spain. And a few months after I moved to Spain, after I graduated from my PhD, something happened in my life that changed everything. A few days after Christmas Day that year, my dad died in an accident at work. That was a game changer. Because it's like, you don't expect it. It was not expected. My dad was a young man. So when all that happened, my family requested me to go back to my hometown to help my mother, who was now by herself with no support at home, and get a serious and stable job. But then I thought, under all that pressure, about my dad's life. My dad was never given an opportunity or a choice of what he wanted to do in life. He was given a job, and he had to do his job to feed his family. That was to be a farmer. But then one day, he had to go, and he didn't get to enjoy life, he didn't get to enjoy retirement. And I thought, look, if one day this happens to me, at least I want to be sure that I'm living my best life and that I'm enjoying what I'm actually doing. So no, I'm not going to go back to my village. I'm going to continue my journey, and I want to become an astronomer. And that's how I got my next postdoc position to move here to the US. I moved to the University of Arizona for my second postdoc position. And this was also not easy after all the things that had been happening in the past months. New life, of course, new country, new life, new culture, new colleagues, new supervisor. So in a way, new research topic. And I had to pretend nothing was going on in my life and produce science as I was doing great. There was a lot of pressure. And I must say, at some point I thought about quitting. I just couldn't handle it. It's like, maybe they were right, and I cannot become an astronomer after. Maybe I'm not made for this. So I started questioning myself and like wanted to quit. But then I thought, all right, I have never been a quitter in my life, so it's not gonna be now. So I'm gonna try one more thing, and if it doesn't work, I quit. So I went to therapy. It was very revealing. It was very humbling. And I learned a lot of patterns that I was doing for myself, in which I was boycotting myself. And I learned overall that I had already all the tools I needed to be happy and to be successful in my life. So that was one of the best things I learned for myself. And how stupid of me would have been just to quit when some months after I got my first position as a staff astronomer in one of the big observatories in Hawaii, the biggest one. And I just got this job because, you know what the value was here? The experience that I had in astronomical instrumentation, and also the job that I have now. And I thought that was the position was a failure. What? So don't be afraid of doing your own path. Sometimes doing something different to what everybody else is doing makes you special and makes your path easier to get to your dream. I was in Hawaii for 2 years. I learned a lot personally and professionally. They were tough years because I was in the most isolated part of the world. But it made me super resilient to be by myself. I learned how to be by myself in peace. And this made me very resilient when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, because I knew how to do that already. The pandemic, I got the greatest opportunity of my life. That was moving here to Baltimore to work for the James Webb Space Telescope. This is the biggest telescope that we have ever put into space, one of the most sensitive ones, and the one that is doing all the groundbreaking discoveries in astronomy now. We launched this telescope in Christmas Day of 2021, and it was one of the most exciting days in my life, I can tell you. And I thought, if I had told little Elena that I would be here today, she would not have believed me. And after all the discouraging words that I had to listen to during my career, I'm happy that I stayed true to my heart and that I continue pursuing my dream of becoming an astronomer. So yes, I was born in a farmer's family in rural Spain. These hands have become garlic, grapes, and olives. And now, I'm an astronomer. Thank you.